Welcome back, listeners, to the Brighter Side of Blue, our worldwide podcast, coming to you almost live from Columbo's Cafe and Tavern in Dogtown, home of the famous, world-famous Seabo's Pizza. World-famous Seabo's Pizza and daily lunch specials, just like your grandma used to make every day. I'm Danny.
I'm Tommy.
Tony
in the house.
Tony's and producer John.
And producer John, of course, is in the house.
Tony Lockenick, back again.
Where is JJ?
JJ, yeah.
JJ's hunting.
What's he hunting?
Deer, I believe.
Does he ever hunt? Does he ever leave the cabin?
I don't believe he does. If it is, it's for a short time, and then he goes back. He goes with his family, his son, and his cousins, and
it's a family affair.
It's a family thing, and they do it every year. So he's
JJ,
out there.
He's camp security.
Campbell Security's down there.
Campbell, that's right. We hired. They brought down Campbell.
How do you get a hold of them?
You get a hold of them at CampbellSecurityGroup.com.
Yeah, man, they're guarding the camp, John.
Corby Campbell. Yep.
Producer John, could you kill Bambi? Could you shoot a deer?
If it pissed me off.
What would a deer do to piss you off? How would that go down?
Get in front of my car.
Hey, we're up to 27 million listeners.
Holy cow.
Or likes or something like that. But so help.
or something like that.
But help us out by hitting that button, subscribe, like, share, tell your folks about it. We got all kinds of things. What do we got coming on tonight, Tommy?
Today we got a special Federal Friday,
which is taped on Wednesday
and will be released this Monday.
Released on Monday, but called Federal Fridays.
Yes, and on this one, as many of our listeners know, Jack Riley is he's a candidate, a finalist for the DEA administrator's position.
Number one dog in the country?
Yep. So he's a finalist for that, and him and Joe break down of what he would do if he were lucky enough to get that job. And they went through some neat stuff and how Jack sees his strategy implemented with DEA if he got that position. It was a real neat interview, and it comes out that if he does get that job, he's going to take Joe with him. So. And they talk about their strategy, so it was very interesting, wasn't it, John?
Very interesting.
So,
and who's that brought to us by?
And that is brought to us by our new sponsors, Charlie and Molly Vitale and their families. Charlie's a friend, and big supporter of the police. He owns a concrete company called VJ. Obviously, a lot of our listeners that they do bigger jobs. I don't know if it's so much a sponsor to get things, but they really enjoy the police. Big backers of the Police Foundation, which helps police officers get equipment to everybody. So they listened to the show. They thought it was great, and they wanted to help out. So they are going to be the weekly sponsor of our interviews that
for
we
Federal
do
Fridays.
For our interviews on our show.
Okay.
And then it comes out in the show that Federal Friday might be expanding a little bit. So we'll see what happens.
Very nice. Cool. Very nice.
Tony, you worked with Jack, didn't you?
I did, both Jack and Joe, and great guys. At that time, we had a bad relationship with a lot of federal agencies, and then Jack and Joe came along, and man, they were easy to work with, great guys, and they trusted us. So
yeah. They put us in a lot of, like you said, they put us in positions to succeed.
Yeah,
and really help
credit
them.
when you did.
And absolutely, Nathan. Jack's not a big guy on credit and who gets arrested. And
the good thing about him is, and Joe, you'd have a problem. Before it was like, no, we're the feds, we're doing it this way.
Yeah.
You could go and talk to them, and you'd sit there and come to reason it out, and they'd work with you.
Whatever made sense.
Yeah, they were great guys. Work, and I will say this: every agent that Jack sent over worked their ass off, which you didn't get a lot of federal guys did that.
Yeah.
With us anyway.
Right.
So.
And like you said, Tony, if there was and there's a lot of disputes in the narcotics game. There's a lot of egos involved. Yeah. Everybody wants their hand in the pot, and those they can get pretty downright mean, the things that are said in those meetings. But those guys brought a different aspect to it, and they would they would listen to logic, and if you presented them with a logical explanation of why you wanted to do something or how it should be done, they had no problem doing it your way.
That's huge.
And you could speak your mind to them. I mean, you could tell
Absolutely.
them, and after it was over with, we'd go out and have a beer, and we were back to normal. So,
Absolutely.
They were great to deal with.
Then you worked with them in mobile as well as the Most Violent Offenders Unit, where I had the pleasure of working for you, Spies, Cronin, and Riley all at one time.
Jeez Louise.
That was a fun time in my career.
Well, it took 4 of them
To babysit you.
to keep tabs on you.
Hey, I always say I had a full head of blonde hair. But it was fun, and like Tom said, we laughed a lot more than anything.
Right.
We did laugh. So
Tony, what was the largest money seizure with drugs that you ever were involved in?
money seizure was with him, and I think it was 150 grand down on Grand.
That was Leo. That was Turntine's house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was more like 600.
Oh,
600K?
okay, so-
Well,
Yep.
it keeps going down, so. Just kidding.
Hey, my math isn't so
Yeah,
good.
so and neither your memory. So for the listeners, we have listeners all over the world. You knew that. So how does that break down? Like the feds get a certain amount, and then local law enforcement gets. Do you know that?
It all depends on how much involved our guys are, and he was involved from the get-go.
In the investigation from the get-go.
Right. So I think at that point it was it 40% or 60%?
You add up all the people in the unit, so the DEA would seize the money under their, and then in our group, there's county guys, there's Florissant guys, there's Bridgeton guys, and what they would do is whoever had the most to do with, everybody would get a little something, but the people who did more in the case would get a little bit more, and that was something that Jack and Joe instituted to encourage departments to send their
Best guys.
right, rather than just come over there with a number on their head, because a lot of the groups up till then would just, they'd even it out, and whatever was going, you get 11%, you get 11%, and everybody would get 11% no matter what they did in the case, and that can be unfair sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But
So
that
they-
asset forfeiture was a godsend for a lot of smaller
Oh.
departments, and actually for our bigger department. I mean, a lot of great tools were purchased
Right.
through the asset.
Because you
forfeiture
can't use it
program.
for pay or overtime,
Yeah,
but you
no.
can use it for equipment, which is, it's obviously very needed stuff. So
Yeah.
And for us, with that violent offenders unit, it was just strictly city policemen. And we had some ATF guys and DEA guys. So if we did a case and we seized money there, we'd get the bulk of the money.
Right.
They'd only take 30% maybe for doing all the work, and then we'd get like 60 to 70%. So
Yeah.
for us, if we did something then, it was a pretty good hit for the city.
Me and your brother Timmy were working together in interdiction, and Timmy had this DEA agent out of Phoenix, out of Arizona, and the guy evidently was a desk jockey. He just stayed behind the desk and he studied things and tickets, and he called Timmy up and said, "Hey, you guys need to check out a guy coming through on a train, midnight it was a Sunday, and he paid cash for his ticket at the last second, and then I didn't know all these clues, and his wife is on the same train, paid cash at a different time, and they're sitting in different seats." So Timmy calls me up and says, "Icky, get up. We're going down. I'm picking you up. We're going down to the train station." So we get on. We board this train when it comes through, and we see the guy, and we already passed his wife in the seat. Go up to him, and Timmy says, "Now I'm new at the unit, so I'm just watching Timmy and all." He goes, "Hey, just a few questions. Are you traveling with anything, any large amounts of currency or anything like that?" And the guy goes, "I mean, yeah, I have some money. I'm going to Chicago to buy some diamonds." And so Timmy
on a
goes,
Greyhound.
on a Greyhound bus. And so Timmy goes, "Well,
I ought to buy a car.
are you traveling with anybody else?" And the guy goes, "No." So he lied right there. And Timmy goes, "Well, where are you carrying the said money?" And guy opens up a duffel bag, and this is how everybody carries their money. It was
to go buy diamonds. Yeah.
you have to go buy diamonds on the train. It was just white towels with gray duct tape, and Timmy goes, "That's the money." Yeah. So, long story short, the wife had another black duffel bag with white towels and this and that, and Timmy says, "This is all money. How much do you have?" And the guy goes, "I have $270,000. That's how many diamonds I was going to buy."
One big one.
Bring it back.
One big ass diamond.
Bring it back on the bus.
Yeah, and bring it back on the Greyhound. So Timmy, and I don't remember all the legal mumbo jumbo, pulls out a document and says, "Listen, we have to account for this money. We work for a detached DEA and this and that. We have to account for this money, and the burden is on you to show us how this money came about and the origin of this money. Blah blah blah. You can come with us. or you can stay on the train, and we'll give you all your information, and we'll take the money, and then you can meet us with your attorney later or whatever. Guy goes, I'll stay on the bus.
Just signed a receipt.
He signed the thing,
Signed
and
the
then we go
receipt.
up to the wife, and we caught her 9 lies. I'll stay on the bus.
Yeah.
It was $511,000.
Yeah.
He said it was $275. We sat up all night just counting this money and
Ended up
stuff.
being
but-
500, huh?
No, no, it was right around 480. But no, come on now, we would do.
I
But
kid.
it was
We kid. We
500.
kid.
That was a nice hit. And there was this guy from Arizona just sitting on a computer checking tickets
yeah.
and all this different criteria.
That's what was cool about all of this is the contacts you made from other agencies.
Right.
And then if you had something, you'd call them, or if they had something, they'd call you.
Yeah.
So, it was kind of like a little network. But
And
yeah,
then,
Yeah.
and then a lot of times the UPS people would get involved, and they knew what they were looking
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
And all these people, like you said, they come in at the last minute. They know the store closes at like 7 o'clock.
Yeah,
and they'll
yeah.
come in at like 7:25.
Squeeze it in there.
And,
Yeah.
and pay in cash, handwrite the label.
Yeah.
And those are all just red flags that thing's going to get stopped somewhere anyway.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, like you said, is one of them clerks. And we used to pay them back in the day.
To call you up and just
if
text
they gave us clues and got us packages, we'd pay them.
Yeah,
Why not? They're doing just
pay
what
informants every day,
what the
so,
informants
yeah.
do, confidential informants. So
Wow. Anyway,
Yeah, it
that's
was fun.
good.
It was fun.
So that's good. I'm looking forward to listening to Jack and Joe talk on
Absolutely.
Federal Fridays,
Yep.
filmed on Wednesday, released on Mondays.
On Monday, yeah.
Yeah. So
What do you do on Saturday?
not yet.
Not yet.
We're trying to fill that up.
We're going to do Federal Tuesdays on Saturday and release that on Thursday. So hang in there for that. Changing subjects a little bit. What Brad Pitt is back in love?
Oh, dude. Did you guys hear this one about the AI? Tony, did you
I
hear
heard
this one?
rumors of it.
So this gal, she thinks she meets Brad Pitt's mom on Facebook. So they're back and forth, and she thinks she's at. I mean, so you can tell what state of mind this gal might be in. But
She thinks she's communicating with Brad Pitt's mom on Facebook.
and Brad Pitt's mom says you would be a good fit for my son. He's coming off a divorce with what's her name,
Angelina.
Jolie. So he's going through that divorce. I think you might be good for him. So they keep talking. Well, of course she introduces the gal to Brad Pitt on Facebook. I'm sure Brad Pitt is all over Facebook. And so they start changing photos and everything. Well, the gal falls in love. And so Brad Pitt ends up going to the hospital.
And this is an artificial intelligence
Right.
Brad Pitt.
Well, it's a scammer on the other end. Right, but they're imposing pictures. And so Brad Pitt goes to the hospital. And now the hospital pictures start coming in with him in the hospital. And she's distraught. She can't believe this shit. So apparently she's not checking any other social media but this. So Brad's in the hospital.
No fact
and-
checking.
Right,
Entertainment news.
She could be on the
TV.
show.
so all of a sudden, it comes time to pay the medical bills, and Brad ain't got no money. So she's like, "What are you talking about? You ain't got no. You're fit.
famous
You've been in
movie
all
star.
these movies." And he said all of his
Fight
money
Club.
was.
Didn't Fight Club pay you?
He said all of his money was tied up in the divorce. That Angelina and her lawyer have tied up all the money, and he has no money. So this gal gets a divorce, sells her house, and wires this dude $800,000. Love.
And the dude is not Brad Pitt.
Yeah,
And her
right.
money is legit.
But so then
gone.
they started showing some of the pictures of like the photo chops. These weren't even good. It was like somebody laying in a hospital bed
It was like
with
Darren
Brad
Hill.
Pitt's head up, like,
It was like Darren Hill did them.
right,
Oh
exactly,
my God.
exactly.
It was like John Belushi's body with Brad Pitt's head on it.
So,
yes.
how's this end?
Oh, he's had a rough.
She's broke.
I guess she's broke. She ain't getting that money back. You wire $800,000. Good luck. You're done. once you hit send, there's no unsend.
Man, you can't fix it.
And I don't know if I guess I feel sorry for her, but that's.
No, I
mean,
feel
come on,
sorry
man.
for her because she had blinders on. She thought she was dealing with Brad Pitt.
Come on, man. This is to randomly meet Brad Pitt's mom.
on Facebook.
Huh?
And then the next thing,
That ain't right. I feel bad. What else you got?
we just came back from our trip. And we apologized last week, guys, for all our sponsors. We didn't get you guys in. We had planned on shooting from Florida, where we were all at, and things went
haywire.
Well,
And
it's
it
completely
started
south.
on the plane going down there. You should have seen this.
How many was it?
How was your flight, Tommy?
Yeah, it was all right.
What happened?
Well, I hate flying, right? Everybody knows I just despise to fly. I mean, just don't like it. So I took some gummies. I took 4 gummies, 10 milligrams each. And just for everybody out there, everybody thinks that it is a lot, but it's not that much for me. It's just not. It'll get me, but it doesn't get me real bad.
Crusty veteran.
It's like a 6-pack for me. It's,
right. So I take these while I'm in the gate, or before I go in the gate, and I go sit down. I get a water, waiting for the plane to take off. I'm drinking my water, and when I start to go on the plane, I got a little bit of it left. Well, as I'm coming down that runway to go to the plane, it starts to kick in pretty good, and then I'm getting this cotton mouth, and bad. So I just finished. I'm thinking, okay, I'm getting on the plane. It won't be that long until I get a water, but I'll just finish this off and take care of the cotton mouth for. Well, it took. I go in and I sit down. I go to the back of the plane, sit down. And this cotton mouth's coming on strong. So I got a piece of gum. I'm chewing a piece of gum so my ears won't pop on the plane. I heard that's a trick. So I was using that trick, and so I'm chewing the gum, and then this thing's kicking in, and it's not going away. And I'm thinking, should I ask them? Stewardesses not, but they're all running around. They're busy.
Yeah.
I was like, they'll get to it. So I was on the A cluster on the Southwest, so there's a lot of boarding
A
to be done.
cluster. This is the policeman promotion process. I was in the A cluster.
It's the only time he's ever been in the A cluster.
Welcome to the A cluster.
Well, you usually an F, weren't you?
I never took the test, but that's funny. For all those that don't know, that's how they group
Rank
people
the
in our rank
promotion process.
clusters. But I was in the A cluster on the
A
plane.
boarding group.
Yep. So there's a lot of boarding to be done. So it's taking a while. This cottonmouth's kicking in. I mean, it's getting worse. And so we're now, in taxiway. We finally get off, and now my gum is starting to stick to my teeth, and I've chewed the complete any kind of liquid out of the gum, any kind of saliva or any kind of juice I get from the gum was gone. And we're just taking off, and I'm going, okay, once they get up there, they'll serve water or something, I'm sure. So we get up there, and it seemed like it was an hour, but probably half hour in, they come around, they take the drink orders. I was like, thank God. So they go make all these drinks, and they come to serve them, and they get like 4 rows away from me, and we hit some wicked turbulence.
Oh, that's right.
We hit some wicked turbulence, and they tell everybody, we've seat belts back on.
And the pilot
Stewardesses
has asked
go
us to
sit down.
sit back down.
And they had to bring all their shit back, and they sat down, and it had to be 35 minutes. And I thought I was going to be the first person to ever die from cottonmouth. She brought that water there. She brought that water, and I grabbed it, and I handed it back to her. Can I get some more?
were you seeing like oases, like a desert movie?
And she came back with the whole bottle, and I go, that'll work. So that was my.
Oh my God! That's so pathetic in so many ways. But he usually drives down there, and so next year for the boys trip, he's going to stop by Schicker Ford of St. Louis, and he'll probably have to rent one of their F-150s. We just got word from the folks at Schicker Ford of St. Louis that they're sitting on the largest selection of pre-owned vehicles anywhere, and they want your used car. And they'll pay top dollar. They'll pay more than anybody else, and that's like cash in your pocket. So you're going to buy a new car, you're trading one in. They're going to give you more cash for that trade-in than anybody else will. So it's like cash in your pocket. Go see them. There are strong supporter of the police and of the podcast. They're out in Union and Washmo as well. Chrysler, Jeep, Ford. So Tommy, you'll probably be driving one of those Fords down there next year.
And but first I would drive over to the Riverbend Cigar Company.
Get you some stogies.
And then bring some stogies down there for all your neighbors. They were smoking cigars.
Yeah, they were.
Playing bocce. So you go to the Riverbend Cigar Company at 8984 Watson Road. You see Dan Ponder, and grab some cigars where you can get the lower brands, the lower price brands, and up to the most expensive cigars you want. So
I was on a
that's what
trip
you do.
this weekend, and my with some buddies. We do it every week, every year in January. But my friend Kevin Jones, who's a huge fan of the show, he stopped by Riverman Cigar on the way.
Did he?
Down to our campsite, and Dan hooked him up with a bunch of good stuff. So.
Oh, nice. We love when our listeners stop by and our sponsors and take care of business.
And
Absolutely.
Dan gave him the discount for the Brighter Side of Blue.
Brighter Side of Blue.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah, but you mentioned that down in
Support
Sugar Forest,
those
St.
that
Louis.
support us, right?
Doggone right.
Come on now.
Communities that support the podcast are safer places.
Yeah, no, businesses that support the podcast are safer places to shop. Damn right.
Oh,
You got
my
any useless information for us?
I do, but it's
Come on.
it's simple. It is simple because it's January is when we're filming this. But let me get my notes. Okay.
Uh-oh.
So
I'm going to make him repeat it.
the month. No, I got it.
You need that.
No, I don't need my cheaters, Tony. Thanks. But January, the month of January, is named after the Roman god Janus, Janus. The Roman god Janus, and the Roman god Janus had two heads. One that looked backwards,
Big
and
one
one
and a
that
little one.
It's just there was just so many avenues there.
No, there was a lot of layups. And obviously, producer John took one of them. But one head that looked backward and one head that looked forward to the future. And that's the month of January was named after it. Janus, the Roman god.
Okay.
Also, the 31st day of January. January on the calendar only had 30 days. But the 31st day of January was added to the calendar by Julius Caesar.
What do you do that for?
I don't know. He loves
Just needed another day. Just
one more
love
day.
January.
He couldn't pay his rent.
Need another day.
That was due on the 30th.
Need one more day.
Let's make another
Paid
day.
Friday.
There'd be some people on January
That's some good
434th. What day is it? January 430th?
I haven't paid my rent in a long time.
It's not February yet. Anyway, so that's some month of January thing. And the other tidbit information that I'm making my listeners smarter is the very first phone book was put together and printed in 1878 and only contained 50 names.
It was a book.
It was a phone book.
That's a
This is a
page,
piece
yeah.
of paper.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
Where was that at? You know, what town? What
I
city?
don't. But I appreciate you fronting me off with not
Green
doing-
Acres.
not going deeper in my.
Acres, yeah.
What
You had to
year,
climb
what
up
year
a
was
pole.
that?
1878.
What year was the phone invented? Maybe that's why it was so thin.
1890.
The phone hadn't been invented yet. Like people like reserve numbers.
If we get this, if we get
If
this
this
phone,
thing gets invented, I want this number.
I'm one.
Just number one, yeah.
John's on a roll tonight. Oh my God, Tony, it's good to have you here.
Yeah, I enjoyed
Sitting
it.
in for JJ. Big
Had to fill in
shoes.
for you last week.
Yeah, how'd you
2 weeks
do?
ago. I did great.
You know what Tony said? He filled in and he said as soon as he put my headphones on, his neck started going up.
And then he took the headphones off and it just went right back down.
Right back normal. I was fine then. Yeah, I couldn't turn my head for a while.
Tony's
Try
a
being-
social media darling now.
Why? How?
What story were you telling?
Oh yeah,
We were talking about mobile last week.
Yeah, but we were talking. I don't know which one it was. One of these shorts that we just put out. You got several 20,
That's
30,000 hits.
When the Pearl got shot in the head.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Shot in the
Yeah,
head.
that was shot in the head. The Pearl got shot in the head, and we were laughing about it.
Only
It's
Pearl.
the only podcast you can talk about
It's the
that.
only time you can say you were laughing about a friend of our policeman
Shot
getting
in the
shot in the head.
Well, if
Got
you know,
shot in the head, still made it to Sundeckers at night.
and I think they stopped on the way so he could get something to eat because he said that hospital's going to take forever. So
Oh my God.
only the Pearl. If you knew the Pearl, you'd understand.
So
love 'em.
the Pearl was is a copper named Dan Early.
Yeah.
What?
He doesn't want his name on the thing.
Dan Late and
Just call him the Pearl.
the Pearl.
Pearl.
So the Pearl's the Pearl is he does things at his own pace, and he's redoing my old house. He's redoing the basement, and so it was always awesome when he showed up, and it was also very intermittent. like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and they'd show up and this and that. This one day he calls me, and it's I never forget. It was 9:50 in the morning. He goes, "Hey Dan, I'm swinging by, gonna finish that job up." He says, "Before I come over, I'm swinging by McDonald's. You want me to pick you up anything?" I said, "Yeah, pick me up a McGriddle and a couple McGriddles." He goes, "Okay, gotcha." 10:30, 11:30, 12:30, 1 day, 2 days, never showed up. Called me and said he's going to get the drive-through. Do I want anything? He's coming to finish the job. 3 weeks.
That's the Pearl. Is anybody shocked by that?
No.
That's Pearl.
We did great work when you got there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
He's
he
a hell of a-
did.
he was a great carpenter now.
Oh my God.
He was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think he started in the carpenter union.
Oh yeah. He was 100%. I grew up with him. Did you know that?
Where?
In South St. Louis, him and his I know his sister. She was a great athlete. I grew up with Pearl. We were just little flag football players and played sports together.
We went to high school together too.
You guys went to high school. It's yep. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, there was that. We got distracted. But really, what I want to hear, I want to know if you're going to be able to come strong tonight with any JJ Zen brought to you by Tony.
I think yeah. I don't know if they'll be as good as JJ, but
Well, we'll be the judge of that. So what do you have, Tony?
well, the one is if you lend a friend $20 and you never see him again, it might be money well spent.
Nice.
Nice.
I like
yeah.
that. That's really good. So if you
And I do have another one.
okay,
Come
If you
on,
wanna
let's
vote
go.
on it.
Let's
yeah.
The other one is you should never criticize a man unless you walk a mile in his shoes first. That way, when you do criticize him, you're a mile away and you got his shoes.
It's a
Vin
Vin
Yee. You stole that from Vin Yee.
He said,
Yeah.
You stole that from Vin Yee. That thief.
Yeah,
You got a plagiarist.
yeah.
Oh, Vin's going to be pissed.
Oh, we're leaving that in. Poor Vin
Yeah,
Yee.
we're leaving that in for sure.
So
That's good advice. So
on your
Might
free,
have been understandable though.
yeah, you
Vin
said
Yee
it.
kinda
You said it a lot
yelled.
clearer, and it's exposed that you don't really listen to the podcast unless you're on it.
Even that. My wife listens to all of them, but I'm just like,
Yeah, whatever. I don't got time for that. Oh my
I used
God.
to work with them knuckleheads.
Yeah, you
I got another plane story if you want another plane story.
doggone right before we get to newsroom.com.
So we're on the plane, and I'm in observant mode. I got the cottonmouth kicking, but I'm just watching people.
Surviving.
And you know how every couple knows how to trigger their significant other. It's just the way life is. And every once in a while, you just know good beef's about to go down.
Yeah.
So this young couple, the guy's holding the baby, and he hands it to the female. And as he hands it to the female, I don't hear the question he asked. But her answer as she turned around was, "Well, if you don't think it'll kill you." And I'm thinking, oh, instant beef. This is a beef. Something's about to go down.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Everybody got them beefing words. Those are beefing words.
my beefing word I know I'm in trouble or being sarcastic at was when my wife would say something like, "Well, could you at least empty the dishwasher? Can you at least trim the lawn?" Like, why do you have to throw that word at least in there? Can't you just say,
Right.
"Hey,
Why?
can you swing by the dishwasher, clean her out?" But yes, she has to say, "Hey, could you at least?"
Right, like that's the first, like that's
Yeah,
the only thing you're going to do all day.
That's going to be the only request for the next week.
Right. If you're saying that that's the only thing I got to do all day, I'll do it.
I'll do it. Yeah.
Right.
Well, the way she worded it the first time, it sounds like a question, and you could say no.
Hey, I haven't tried that.
But if she takes off that can,
Yeah.
and then she just starts out with the at least,
Yeah, yeah.
that's not
And
a
you at
question
least,
no
yeah,
more.
that's not a
Yeah, yeah,
question.
It's
yeah,
no
yeah.
longer.
Yeah.
That's a statement.
Oh my God. Producer John, what do you got over there? You sitting
on.
on newsroom.com?
Come on.
Bring it.
I am. You guys ever heard of Tsutomu Yamaguchi?
Suggs.
Who hasn't?
Suggs.
Rick, have you heard of him? Tsutomu Yamaguchi.
Gooch.
The gooch.
Our friend,
gooch.
I'll just call him Yamaguchi. Yamaguchi was on a 3-month-long business trip.
Long one.
He worked for Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, and
Go figure.
3 months. And it was the last day, so he's walking to the train station. And he looks up in the sky and he sees a huge plane. And all of a sudden, out of this plane comes this huge object with like 2 parachutes. Well, our friend Yamaguchi was in Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. So anyway, he next thing he knows, there's this huge explosion. Well, he was in the Navy, so his naval training told him to. He jumped off the road into a ditch and put his hands over his eyes, and he put his thumbs in his ears, and it goes off. And luckily, he fell face down in the mud. And he was walking with a woman. When he got up, she was gone. She was like evaporated, but he survived. So he got he got the radiation, the burns and stuff from the radiation. But he lived, and he made it to a shelter, and he spent the night there. The next morning, he gets up, and he gets to the railway station, which remarkably is still up and running. So he gets on the train, and he goes home. So he goes home. They treat him for his burns. He's heavily bandaged, and so I guess back then in Japan, getting blown up in a nuclear bomb wasn't enough to take off work for a few days. So he goes into work 3 days later, he's in there with his boss and some coworkers, and he's giving them like the whole details about the explosion. Well, all of a sudden they're in this meeting room, and there's this there's another bright light. Well, he lived in Nagasaki. Oh. So two atomic bombs in 3 days. But in the first one, he was about 2 miles from the epicenter, or whatever they call it. It's not called ground zero either. It's called something else with a bomb like that.
Where it landed?
Yeah, where it landed. It blows up in the air. But in Nagasaki, he was like 6 miles away, and it was really hilly there, and and the building was reinforced, so he lived through that one too. So he made it home. He gets to his house. He's checking on his wife and his son. Well, like half the house is blown down, but luckily his wife and the baby were going to buy him more bandages. So she wasn't home when the bomb kind of destroyed the house. So anyway, he ended up living through both these
atomic bombs.
Yeah, but he ended up dying of cancer.
Oh, just go figure.
In 2010.
Holy cow!
He lived to be 93 years old. He had and his wife lived to be like 88.
Wow.
And they both had different like ailments that they attributed to the bomb
fallout,
and all the radiation. But he lived that long, and he
damn.
He
face down in the mud.
He spent the rest of his life just kind of
looking in the sky.
Looking in the sky. And ducking.
Yeah.
The rest of his life, very skittish.
Very little skittish.
Dude was always looking around.
Anyway, he's one of only a few people they know of that survived both of the.
Oh my God!
Nuclear bombs.
That's pretty wild.
Yamaguchi, the gooch.
So I titled that one, "I'm having a rough week."
Oh yeah.
You think your plane ride was long?
Yeah.
Imagine being on that train.
Cottonmouth.
Yeah,
He
with burns
was.
all over you.
He had cottonmouth for like 52 years. The radiation stuck.
I gotta think cottonmouth could be a byproduct of nuclear bombs. I'm just guessing.
Oh my God!
But if I were ever to get like nuclear injury of some sort, I'd probably go to primeperformancestl.com.
See if they could help you out.
There you go. They probably got something, that can get through that. You go in there, you get your blood taken, and probably, we got the solution for you.
Yeah.
And
take 2 of these.
Get your blood taken, and it's bright.
Right. And
green,
then the next thing you know,
glowing.
you rediscover your prime.
Yeah.
And what they offer at Prime Performance is testosterone therapy, hormone therapy, vitamin injection, medical weight loss, IV therapy, and peptides. Their locations are 1222 Central Park Drive over in Illinois, and 44 Fenton Plaza here in St. Louis, just outside of St. Louis. Again, go down and see them, and get it. You can sign up for free consultation at primeperformancestl.com.
That's incredible.
And we got one more new sponsor that we're happy to have aboard.
Marvel
Marvel Printing. Mark Colombini. Mark is Michelle Stanzi's husband, and he is the part of the Stanzabini family, which they are called now. And Stanzabini. And Marvel Printing is located at 1928 South Broadway. And they can be reached at 314-231-1477. And hold on one second.
Go ahead. Take your time, Grasshopper.
Are you calling them?
Yeah.
You placing an order?
I just want to read something. Cut that out, Jack, up until this point. Marvell Printing is a full-service union print shop that has been serving the local community since 1920. They offer a variety of printing services designed to assist the local businesses get their projects printed quickly and professionally and at a competitive price. They're located at 1928 South Broadway. Phone number is 314-231-1477.
Awesome.
And
Welcome
thank
aboard.
You. Welcome aboard, Mark.
Welcome aboard.
Thank
Welcome
you.
aboard.
Yep.
Yeah.
Family.
Before we wrap up, you smell all those SIBOs out in the audience? There's like
Come on.
17 pizzas on
At
those
least
tables out there.
Ricky Ray's just railing one down.
Yeah, we're going to get
Right
into
there
some of that
outside.
pizza. Yeah.
Hey, Tony, should we tell everybody about my first day on the police department? Should we go into that story yet?
On the police department or in the bureau?
No, it was on the
this
police
is
department.
department.
No, that was my first day on the police
First
department.
day in the police department. He was a pro.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I show up to roll call the day after Christmas, 1988. So December 26, 1988. 21 years old. And show up and go through roll call. Don't know anybody in the whole station. I don't know a soul.
Of course not. Yeah.
And show up, go through the roll call. Dave Lowell's our sergeant. He inspects everybody, and then Chuck Mansell, who was my training officer, was supposed to be there. It was the day after Christmas, and it's a Monday. So it's that vacation. You know, that vacation, if you were on vacation, you take that extra day. Everybody thought he was coming back on Monday. He wasn't coming back on Monday, so they said, he'll be here, though. And everybody scurries off, and they take off, and, you know, get the hell out of the station. It's the day after, it's you know, everybody's out of there. And Dave Lowell just says, just look for a short little guy, you know, he's smaller than you. And Mansell's his last name. All right. And that day there was even though it was a Monday, there was a playoff football game on that came on at 2:00. And I looked this up because I was like, why did there was a football game?
2:00.
And it was Christmas on Sunday, so they didn't play on Sunday. They moved the playoff game to Monday at 2:00. So I'm just sitting there. Chuck doesn't show up. I'm just wandering around. I'm just lost. You know, I don't know nobody. Don't have nothing to do. Don't have anybody to talk to.
Correct me here.
What?
Didn't you have money on that game?
Well, that'll come into play here in a minute. That'll come into play here in a minute. So as I, check out this room, check out that room, I've checked out of just about everything I could. You know, I'm just wandering around, and nobody's acting like I need any help. So I was like, all right, I just keep looking for Chuck, and then I walk by the sergeant's room, and they got a TV in there, and the game's on.
In the sergeant's room.
Yeah.
And you're a pro, first day on the job.
And I got money on the game. So I'm like, all right, I might as well just look at the game. So I'm outside their office, but looking into the TV, so I see the TV, and I was like, man, I'm going to get caught. I keep looking in there, now I want to watch the game. So at the end of the sergeant's room, their entrance was right across from the holdover. So I looked down the holdover, and they got a 5-inch TV on the desk down there, way down there. So I was like, I'll go down there. So I went down there, and I turned on the TV, and I get the game on, put the antenna up. It's one of those little shitty ones.
Yeah.
But it's working fine, for the game. I was. And then somebody comes in to book somebody. Hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm Tom. How you doing? You need that? And then I'd get up so they could write down, and I was just there watching the game. Well, then somebody booked a female prisoner, and then that cell was closest to that desk right there. And she just wouldn't shut up. Hey, honey, all right. So I leave. I'm not going to take this.
From day one.
Day one, he's fed up.
I'm fed up with this gal.
I ain't listening to this gal. So then I go out, and then there was the locker rooms downstairs, and I had been down there during our walkthrough a couple days before, and the locker room was still open. Our locker room was down there, so I said, I'll just walk down there, fuck around down there a little bit. And then when I was never, so I looked in it said bureau on the door or whatever. So I looked in there and there was nobody in there, but the TV was on, and guess what was on?
Football game.
That football game. So the bureau's completely empty. So I just walked in, put my feet up on the desk, and I was like, well, I'll go back up there around 5:30 and see if Chuck's up there, and then if not, I'll go tell somebody, because I wasn't real interested in finding Chuck at this point. So, right. So then, Tony, you can take it from there.
So we come in, it was me and Randy and Tony Rask and Larry Purvis. So we get in the bureau, and back then, uniform guys weren't allowed in the bureau unless you asked them back there, you know. So we come walking down there, and here's this new guy. Nobody knew him, sitting there with his feet up on the desk watching TV, watching the football game. And Tony Rask was even like, who in the hell is that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. So I go over there, and I go, hey, dude, what are you doing? Or, what are you doing? And he looks at me, he goes, I'm Tom Sawyer. I'm looking for Chuck Mansell or whatever. I'm like, Chuck ain't in here. And he goes, oh. And he kind of looks around and he goes, I got money on this game.
Remember who was playing?
Yeah, it was the Rams in Minnesota.
Yep.
It was the Rams in Minnesota.
So that was my first
Did you throw
meeting.
his ass out?
No, he went and
stayed there.
snitched me out. He went upstairs and snitched me out. There's a probe down there. And they ain't got no partner. He's just wandering around the station like a homeless kid. I was like a homeless guy.
That was my first meeting of Tom Sawyer.
Oh,
Yep,
my
and then
God.
they ended up calling in Malachek and his partner, and I rode with Malachek that night. So I met both of these.
Come full
two.
circle.
And here we are all these years later. I met him on the first day of the police department. Now
That's
we're still
pretty
buddies.
cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. That's a good story. That's a good story. Tommy, what about our communities, Tommy?
You know what? I got to have one last thing to say, and I don't know what it is, but no.
You did have one other thing.
We did have one other thing we were supposed to cover.
I got something.
Yep, go
Producer
ahead.
John.
Talked to Paige yesterday.
God, yes. Thank you.
His parole hearing's on February 20th. He had his initial meeting, and everything went fine. So hopefully he'll get out 5 to 10 business days after the 20th.
After the 20th. So
He thinks he's going to get out like the first week of
March.
Yeah.
That's
wow.
awesome.
That must seem like an eternity.
Especially after you get that news
Yeah.
a week before Christmas,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
you got to sit there for 3 more months.
Yeah.
Is he in a halfway house now, or is he still in?
He's still at Farmington. So he only got the partial commutation, so he has to go through the whole parole.
Is he coming on the show?
Oh yeah, he's going to be part of the show.
Awesome. Tommy?
All right, I got nothing else. Whatever it is, that's just, sometimes I forget shit.
And this is going to be
Communities.
aired on Inauguration Day. So
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I think a lot
Federal
of good
Monday, it's perfect. And then when Trump gets done getting in there, he can watch the podcast and say,
And he will. 'cause
that's the guy for the job.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the guy for the job. I'm
It
going to go
was
ahead
kind
and
of
pick
like a
him
job
tonight.
interview we had for Jack.
Yep.
Yeah, I hope it
I
turns
put
out
him on
that
I put him on the spot. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
Go ahead.
But yeah, this the communities that support law enforcement are safer places to live, and we hope you enjoy our interview with Jack and Joe, that brought to you by Charlie and Molly Vitale, and courtesy of them, and we thank them for their sponsorship of the show and coming on board. And all right, we'll see you guys next
Enjoy.
week.
Peace.
All right, welcome back to a special edition of Federal Friday, and I guess all of our listeners know, or many of our listeners know, that Jack has been. Jack Riley is here again with Joe Cronin, and Jack has been, I guess, I guess you wouldn't say nominated. What would you call that, Jack?
I'm on a list of potential nominees.
Nominees for the administrator of DEA, which is, even if you don't get it, it's a very cool, just to be nominated for, or just to be thought of for a position like that is pretty cool.
Well, thank you. I'm shocked. I'm actually shocked myself. So.
And Joe, what do you think of all this?
Well, I'm biased, right? So you guys beat me up pretty bad all the time about Riley from the first couple
I didn't beat
episodes
you
to
up.
about now.
I got labeled in that thing too.
I'll tell you what, I think it's a great I think it's a great nomination, we'll just call it, or on the
Right.
list, whatever you want to say. I think it's great. I got the pleasure to work with Jack for a long time. Probably one of the greatest innovators in a government agency I've ever seen in my life. I worked in the private sector for a long time, and he exudes that type of energy. And I think he would be great for the direction forth under Trump and with the DEA and Homeland Security. But I think the number one thing about Jack in this possible appointment is he starts day one.
Right.
There's no figuring it out. There's nothing. And we talked about that on the show. Starts
Well-
day one.
And we've talked about many of the stuff. We'll brush over some of the stuff we've already talked about. But one of the things that I think that I wanted to talk about Jack is the way he communicated and really got with his local law enforcement. And I don't know how to word it, but the way you dealt with the local law enforcement here in St. Louis was very special to all of us. And you have always said that it was very special to you. And I think as we go through the plan that you're going to outline, is very a big part of the plan is your local and federal and state law enforcement.
First of all, I got to say thank you to the podcast and to you two guys who've been dear friends for years. So I appreciate everything you're doing. As far as the way I look at stuff, there is no way that any federal agency, most importantly DEA, can be successful without state and local people working with us. So the plan has them built in just like it has DEA built in. When we talk about a plan, we're talking about a plan for DEA agents, for our state and local friends too, because we have to do it together. We're shoulder to shoulder. It's the strength of our agency, and it's also the strength of why we can make communities safer and do a better job protecting the homeland, because we can't do it without the state and locals, no question.
And Joe talked about starting on day one. And Joe, I think what you mean by that is, with Jack's knowledge, he was the number 2 guy in charge of DEA. So he has a broad knowledge of exactly how DEA works, what can be implemented within DEA, how quick it can be implemented, and what can be done. And I think that it's important to know that I don't think I'm stepping out of bounds by saying you're going to be part of that strategy, correct, Jack?
Absolutely.
Jack, Joe would be part of that.
He's been an integral part of a lot of things I've done throughout my career, but if I'm blessed to get to this next stage, Joe's going to be he's going to be involved in everything, just like this podcast will be.
Hey, come on back. We'll always be ready. But and Joe, you worked in places like Syntac, which is a counter narco-terrorism group, which will be heavy in this. I think that's a very important to the U.S. right now.
I do. I think what's really important with talking about starting on day one is when he was there the first time, when he was the deputy administrator, and why he was the deputy is because Obama, I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, Obama put lawyers above some of these spots for their agendas as well. So a lot of these agencies had Department of Justice lawyers above them, and Jack had one above him as well. That's removed now, which I think is fantastic. I think that stifles innovation, that stifles growth, but most importantly, it pushes somebody else's agenda. So day one, so let's go back to that. Day one means we all kind of know what Trump wants. And the pick of his first DEA administrator kind of sets that tone with the state and locals that you talked about right off the bat. Mm-hmm. He knows that state and locals are essential in flushing out the cartels in the United States and then taking it foreign with your federal partners. He knows that. So Jack created these programs that we talked about before, and we were all a part of putting them together, and the approach is fantastic. I mean, the domestic cartels, the strategic diversion initiative, the initiative of the chemicals, and then on a much grander scale, this foreign terrorist organization type stuff. Combined, 1, 2, 3, you adjust the resources and you put forth to those efforts immediately. Right. And I don't think and I know some of the other DEA candidates that are associated with this nomination process or on the list, and they don't have it.
Right.
You know, and they're dear friends of mine, but I've seen these programs, and it's going to take some big boys and some grown-up people to maybe alleviate some of this foreign stuff that's going on in DEA and protect the homeland. And one of the things that we talked about the other day we go to lunch and we put together information for these podcasts, and we put together some information on some other projects we have going on. And Jack said the greatest thing that DEA can do is be fluid to the threat. And he knows the threat. He's put together a plan for the threat, and he's going to make it fluid to the threat and adjust whatever he has to do from day one. It starts. It's like he never left in 2017, 2018. There's no figuring out, and I know he can't talk about it right now, but he's got his team in his mind. He's got a good team in place. He'll be reaching out for them. They start day one as well, and we start rocking and rolling. There's no big learning curve for the next 8-9 months, and it takes that inefficiency of government and wipes it away.
Right. So, Jack, what does day one look like to you?
Well, I think the most important thing to understand, it's the closest thing to me, is our most valuable resources are our employees. And the message to them has to be consistent, it's got to be firm, and it has to be sent with a sense of urgency. And I may be wrong, but I don't think so. The current administrator, the one that's either left or about to leave in the next couple of days, she's been there 4 years. She has never visited the Chicago Field Division, the Los Angeles Field Division, the Houston Field Division, our three main offices. So just imagine you're sitting there busting your ass as a task force guy or an agent, and you don't even know what this lady looks like, nor has she even graced her presence upon you, which to me is unheard of. This is a team effort. We're not that big of an agency, and that's why I think it's so important for them to hear it from my lips. This is what we're going to do, and I'm going to do everything I can to make this happen. Here's how I look at this. Leadership's about relationships. It's about building coalitions. And my job as the leader of DEA, if I'm lucky enough, is simply this: to do whatever I got to do, to get whatever I have to get to make them successful. And doing it where they will never know not what I want. Because I think that's really important. And what I want, quite frankly, is to shift gears, to target the people that we need to be targeting, the organizations we need to be targeting, and that includes illegal aliens that are acting as proxies for the cartels, to go after them in conjunction and in complementary fashion with their ICE counterparts and the other agencies that are involved in that, because that, to me, is really important. In terms of what we're going to do as a specific agency, is we got to open our eyes to everything. Are we in the right place throughout the country? Are we fluid enough to meet the threat? Are our agents understanding that they may have to move, that they agreed to that as terms of their employment? That's a tough thing to sell and to bring back into focus if it hasn't been enforced in a long time. Unfortunately, we're going to do that. The selection of supervisors, it's going to be a little bit different trend this time. My team and myself will be involved in it much more than it has been in the past. There's some legal requirements we're going to have to deal with, but I want to know that the people that are on the front lines are leading from the front, that take care of their people, and that understand what the president's vision is, what the Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General vision is from day one, so they understand where I'm coming from.
As well as yours, which is going to be the same. We've talked much about the foreign terrorist organizations, in prior podcasts, the domestic cartels. The one thing we haven't really discussed is the chemical flow attack. Joe, can you being in counter narco terrorism, you dealt with this a lot.
Yeah, so we know from what we've done in the past, and back in 2017 when we were both in D.C., we actually started looking into this because it just started to really explode with the methamphetamine and then the fentanyl and then some of the other precursor chemicals. So we know that there's about 7 or 8 countries that are working with China, and China sends these chemicals to those 7 or 8 countries, and then it goes to Mexico or labs in those countries or even on our southern border. And those chemicals are used to make fentanyl, methamphetamine, and some other stuff, some pills and some different things. Those all have to be traced back to the host nation, the host country, and then above the DEA with sanctions or designating some of those people as certain things. That has to be known, but we have to attack that as 1, 2, 3, not just willy-nilly, let diversion figure it out. It has to be part of the primary mission, and then give it to the people above. And that's another thing. Jack's familiar with with Congress. He's familiar with how Washington, D.C. works. He can put forth those numbers and statistics, and we can work that backwards. I think the approach is brilliant. And I think that if there's any chance to put a dent in all of it, it's fantastic. And then I also believe that we have a mandate. There is a mandate here of what direction we need to go in. And it's not political. Jack showed that picture of Notre Dame Stadium. 100,000 individuals. I think it's about 110,000. That stadium dies every year, and it's killed by fentanyl and these precursor chemicals. Can you imagine if a foreign country murdered 110,000 of our citizens? We'd be at war constantly. So I think all of that is going to come into play.
So many of the, just to put it in layman terms, is that many of the chemicals used that are killing Americans are not coming from the cartels, but they're coming from other places also.
Absolutely. China, probably Asia in general, but China is probably the number one source for the critical precursors used to make fentanyl. And those are being shipped primarily by front companies. The Chinese do make an effort to try to cloak and dagger this, but they're going directly into Mexico in ton quantities directly to the cartels. And I think that first of all, I don't think a lot of people understand that. And I know our relations with China are somewhat stretched now, but this is a common bond we have between us because they also have a drug problem in China that doesn't get a lot of publicity, as does Mexico. So there's some common bond there. I think one of the things that Joe tripped on that's so important is one of the things that I learned the hard way my first go around is the importance of keeping key members of Congress abreast of what you're doing.
Correct.
And one of the things that I would do day one is make sure we'd make a list of the crucial senators and congressmen, and then I go and explain my plan to them and keep them updated as we progress. Because that's crucial to funding. Because for us to be able to do what we want to do, it's going to cost some money. And I know the Trump administration knows that, and they're willing to do it. It's just a matter of fact, we've got to get the policymakers to understand what we're up against. I mean, nobody at that level for years considered the Mexican cartels anything but thugs and killers, which they are in grand proportion, but they're also pretty astute businessmen.
Correct.
And the way that they developed the business model for fentanyl, for heroin, for all the opioids, as well as cocaine and methamphetamine, is really something you could teach at Harvard. It is well researched, and they move with the movement of the addiction in America. And I think a lot of our congressmen don't think that way.
And we use the word fluid a lot. They're you have to be fluid because they're fluid. When you cut off one thing, they're going to go another way. When you try to stifle something, they're going to try to find another way to get it in there. So being fluid is very important.
You know, Tommy, the best way to explain that is the use of the cartels of street gangs.
Right.
That allowed them, and I used to say this, is street gangs, in many cases, are their Amway salesmen, if you will. They go door to door, but they're not selling laundry detergent. They're selling heroin and poison. But that has allowed the cartels to be much more fluid, much more out of touch with the direct transactions, and to a certain amount really left them out of the whole process. We've got to look at that. And the way that we do that is we attack communications, we attack organizations, and we begin to put those together, and that's what the domestic cartel program was all based on. And I'm very proud to say that the reason we came up with that plan was because I had relationships with police chiefs across the country, and they kept telling us, you got to come to us with this. We can make a difference on this. We want to be involved. We understand how they hurt our communities. It was just a time that the people that I was reporting to didn't want to take a chance. They felt that for us to try to broadcast the domestic cartel program would frighten liberal policymakers, community leaders as another,
everybody's got to go to jail.
Everyone's going to jail. And that would be, in fact, we would be far more selective in spending our enforcement dollars if that program existed and really went to where I believe it can go.
And it can make a difference.
It can make a difference
Absolutely.
day.
And it can make a difference in those deaths that you're talking about. And I think that's what Americans want to stop the most is the needless deaths of the heroin overdose and this fentanyl. you know, and then, you know, and as many of the listeners will know, the marijuana, you know, it's not a big deal, you know, now that they have dispensaries, but marijuana is coming in by the boatload. That is illegal. It's coming across the border, and that money's going back to these agencies. And if there's one pitch I can make, is just buy your marijuana legally, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
China's no longer, they're in the business as well. I mean, they're shipping, China's shipping all kinds of waxes and different high THC material to the United States, and they're being sold out the back door in all these facilities in California and some other really, really, really liberal states. And they're making millions. Yes. And then China's involved in the money laundering on the back end. And they've learned how to do this with the precursor trade. Right. So it's good.
If you look at some of the cases we've seen in rural national parks just recently, and I would point out, obviously, Washington State, Northern California, even some parts of Arizona, where there are Chinese nationals that are brought into this country illegally, cross the border in Mexico, are sent to a facility where they grow and harvest marijuana on our land, unbeknownst to the local law enforcement. So if you see that type of involvement from a foreign entity who wants to kick our ass and overthrow us, you're beginning to see the bits and pieces of how they can do it. And we've got to be more aware of that too. And that does start with controlling the precursors. It does start with cracking down on importation, on companies that may be suspect. And more importantly, many of these precursors, especially in the large quantities, they're transshipped to other friendly countries. We got to go after those countries too, because that's really a way to evade us. I would also throw out, I think, our military being the best, and I saw what they could do in the Caribbean corridor. We've got to engage a little bit more with them in terms of being able to stop on the high seas and find out what's coming over.
In the SINTOC, where you've been, you've worked with the armed forces and a lot of their special forces, correct, Joe?
I did. And in a different, obviously not in their capacity, right? That was, correct. I think what the SINTOC is that's amazing is they did it on a scale internationally associated with the threat at the time with Hamas, Hezbollah, some other terrorist organizations. Those threats are still there. They still are. But now that concept has to be used to protect the homeland. It has to be used to disrupt the chemical flow. It has to be used to attack these cartels. Unfortunately, because of the border and some other things, these cartels are fat with cash. So they have a lot of cash, they have a lot of innovation, they've perfected moving money across the border, moving money back to China, sending it over to Europe. So a lot of those lessons that were learned by a lot of smart people in SINTOC and some other organizations at SOD, we have to take those and use those in a little bit different capacity.
I think to flavor that, and this is something that I really would try to make clear to people, is the cartels have become so profitable, and we saw this in our own tobacco industry, that they began to diversify into other criminal activities. So they're into corporate espionage now, where they would hold an American corporation operating in Mexico for ransom, if you would, for information. They'd hijack crude oil from one place to another. And obviously human smuggling, kidnap for ransom. These are all offshoots of the cartel's success, and they have to be connected. Mm-hmm. And again, this goes to why it's so important that it's a multi-agency approach. And one of the things that I did when I was the deputy was Phoenix was really the hub for kidnapping for the cartels. Primarily, they would kidnap Mexican nationals, hold them, try to get money. Well, we developed a complete task force that did nothing but did kidnappings. And it pretty much stymied it within a couple of months. Now, it moved to other areas, but just the fact that we were working with our state and locals on something other than what we're traditionally doing shows the strength of what that relationship could be. And I think we need more policymakers to understand that that's exactly why they have to be looked at as foreign terrorist organizations.
I agree.
So let me ask you guys this question. How long, let's just say day one starts, how long would it take to get some of these cartels named as terrorist organizations?
Well, for me, it would start day one in terms of getting to the people on the select committees in Congress and explaining why. To put the story together, it's done. Mm-hmm. And I could talk ad nauseum Tom giving examples of why we need to. The further point is, and this is something that was asked of me not too long ago, is, okay, if we do that, two concerns here. If we, as we've talked on this podcast, if we utilize the military to do certain strikes, what about the proxies that exist in the United States when that happens? What do they do? Mm-hmm. More importantly, what about the 1.5 million U.S. citizens that reside in Mexico? Do they all become hostages? Do they all play a role in this? That is a strategy we really would have to work out. Now, it's been done in Colombia.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Project Columbia was extremely successful. So there's lessons out there that we could take and work. And I think when you look at the Mexican government in general, and I'll probably be the only one to say this because I know the inner workings, if they wanted to stop the cartels, they have the military authority. They also have the expertise to do it. They have not chosen to do it. So we got to push them across the goal line, support them, but also point out that it's got to stop. It's got to stop.
I believe that you nailed it on the head, or head on the nail, or whatever they say. The success brings apart other issues that are monumental.
Right.
The 1.5 million Americans, the fall of their financial system.
Right, because
The infrastructure, the banking system, the infrastructure of what the cartels build on within Mexico, all the islands and pretty areas, and essentially, that stuff is important and has to be looked at. And one of the things, by designating them as a foreign terrorist organization, it not only sends this moniker to them, like we're coming, but it also brings in other policymakers to take a look at the situation to help address some of these other issues.
There's a lot more to it than just saying we're just going to name them a terrorist organization.
There is, but by naming them, you not only designate them and come at them with the full force, you also come at them with the full political force to help those 1.5 million. The State Department's involved.
Or help their banking
The
system.
Treasury Department's involved. Right. So it's a good thing, even though it's a powerful weapon.
Right.
It can be a good thing.
So let's go to, we talked earlier about those strong relationships with state and local agencies, and there's a thing called HIDA. Can you just explain HIDA and how a lot of those strike forces can be formed using all those agencies?
HIDA is a direct funding mechanism out of the White House. And it started about 25 years ago, and it was intended to bring federal resources to high-intensity drug trafficking areas, primarily the border.
Hence HIDA.
Yeah.
And it's HIDA, just for everybody, it's the initials are HIDTA, which is?
High-intensity drug trafficking areas.
All right, there we
and
go.
It was designed initially to augment what was going on there with the federal agencies and with the state and local. So it provided training, it provided funding for initiatives, overtime, equipment. But again, it was designed to help what was existing. In my opinion, it's turned into its own political circus. There's too many hands in the pot.
Right.
I don't think it's consistent with national strategy, even though I do think that they're doing good work. But there's got to be a refocus on that. And one of the things that I would propose right now is that funding be continued, but that it comes through DEA.
Rather than an outside agency. HIDA is an outside agency.
Yeah, rather than going directly to 20 or 25 HIDAs for them to do whatever they want to do.
Right.
And I think that's really important. And I also think that the HIDAs would not have a problem with that.
Okay.
If they understood what the underlying causes were for us to do that, and that's simply to bring everybody on board.
And you would get more say, with that, you would get more say-so on how the money was spent.
I would.
As our DEA would,
I
in
would.
general.
I would. And I think it's important, those HIDA boards are made up of local police chiefs. And this is what I hear from them all the time is like, why isn't DEA more involved in these HIDAs? I mean, we do assign people and personnel and initiatives to that, but the majority of it's state and local or other federal agencies. And my retort to that is because our objectives may be a little bit different. And
right.
We want to be able to meld those things so that we have kind of a one-government approach. So I think the chiefs are, as long as the chiefs, just like any other entity, are worried about their funding.
Correct.
They don't want to lose their funding. They want to gain funding.
Well, and that's how it can be done, though. I think
Yes.
if you streamline that and you make it to where it's coming right from DEA, again, HIDA, more money can be allocated
Right.
to certain different areas for certain projects.
Right.
And
they have to be more fluid too.
correct.
Because they had an initiative that was approved for a year, and 2 months into that year, we've got a complete issue with the cartel and fentanyls in their area. They ought to be able to shit can that and get over.
Keep the same people, but
Yes.
move them to a different direction.
Right. And then be accountable for that.
That's the one question I have. I'm glad you brought that up. Do you think that let's say this next 4 years under Trump, you become the administrator, I foresee much more involvement with the government. Like, these are our tasks, DEA, we want you to help do this. Do you see that as well? Or do you see it like we just go in and kind of willy-nilly?
No. There's got to be a plan. Our resources are finite. And there's got to be a plan, and it's got to work in conjunction with their state and locals' priorities and what they think is important to them, because that's what's important to us. And again, that goes back, Joe, to what we've talked about on this podcast. We've got to look at this from a regional point of view, from a DEA point of view. 4 regions across the country, I think, that would report to Washington but would have their own identity, I do think would enhance our relationships with our state and locals and make sure that we're quickly available to help a problem. Where now it's kind of I got to talk to Washington, I got to do, we've got to fill this form out, it's got to be approved by Maine Justice, all of those bureaucratic bullshit things. And it's the old story, why do we have this? It's just because it's been done that way.
Right.
That's the way it's always been done.
Yeah,
Right.
I think we need to look at that. We need to look at that too, and I think it could be done cheaply.
And I think that the HIDA, that funding is very important because
It's crucial.
Everybody knows. I mean, you've heard every chief cry about it. We're underfunded, we're undermanned, and if that can just alleviate some of those issues, right? It's not going to alleviate. I mean, like paying for overtime. You guys pay for cars. I'm just going back from when I was. I don't think I was a HIDA, but I was under your
You
guys'
were.
plane.
31 was HIDA. Our
Was
group
it?
was HIDA, yeah.
So they paid for our car, our gas, our overtime.
There
They
was
cut it.
equipment, buy money, initiatives, though. We had initiatives. That's what Jack's talking about.
And it really goes to the laying the pipe to the new house. I'll give you this example. One of the best guys I ever got the chance to work with was Joe Mokwa. And we had a relationship that I could go to him, no money involved, and say, we're doing this roundup, can I get 20 guys? And he'd say, you got 100.
Well, I remember knocking down, how many doors we knocked down at one time? Like 60?
No question asked, no.
Right.
And that was all about relationships.
Right.
And then when shit hit the fan on the PD, I'd get the phone call, hey, can you help us out, with the tech side with this? Right. Whatever you need, I'll shut the office down. I don't give a shit. Those are the things that HIDA was designed to do. Mm-hmm. I think they dropped the ball because they became their own entity.
Okay.
And so we've got to look at that. We've got to simplify that. Along those lines, we might as well get this out on the table. We can't do anything unless we have state, county, and federal prosecutors that understand what it is we're trying to do.
Right.
For us to go in and say, hey, we got a house we need a search warrant on because it's connected to a case, that St. Louis is doing, which is connected to Mexico, and have them say, well, we've reached our quota this month. We need more firearms cases. It's got to stop.
Right.
And then a lot of that just coincide. If you're targeting that kind of stuff, the firearms will come with it.
Right.
You don't need to concentrate on firearms. Right. If you're concentrating on the groups themselves, the firearms are going to come out of that group
Absolutely.
somehow. And it's the main thing is tying it all together.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing is the communication and to have that. You have the FBI involved. I think you guys got a great group out there now, or they got a great group out there now. I think it's a HIDA group, isn't it?
Yeah, I actually, we're going to talk about that a little bit because that's something that's essential to this whole plan as well, like how to bring everybody together, and they're called strike forces.
Yeah.
And they're funded by both HIDA and OCDF, but Jack's got some great experience with that in Chicago back in the day.
Well, let's talk about those strike forces
Yes.
and they are good because they're fluid, correct?
They're extremely fluid, and they react to what the local issue is. Chicago, we started it based off to go after Sinaloa because I saw, this was at the height of the prescription drug problem, I saw it shifting to heroin on the street through the street gangs, and we really didn't have the resources at DEA to do it. So we put it together. It was tough to put it together. There was a lot of, Washington was against it, we're losing. No, we're not. We put it together. We brought in the city, the county, the FBI, Secret Service. We had some of state parole.
ATF was always in them. Yep.
ATF. But here's what I mandated. You FBI agents, you're not going to go sit in the fucking corner. You DEA guys, you're not going to hang. Everybody's commingled. Yeah. And you as a DEA agent may have to report to Tom Sawyer, who's the head of the state police, or from St. Louis County. That's the way we do it. We walk in here, we got one badge, that's it. And at the center of that has to be a full-time prosecutor.
Yeah.
That's with the agents and the policemen and task force guys when the case starts.
Yes.
Because that's success from the beginning.
And just to piggyback off of that is the cases that we would work, with the federal government or with the United States Attorney's Office here. Those attorneys, for the most part, there are the gun cases that Mobile would bring off the street that were great gun cases that they just pulled over, and they would take care of those. But anytime we had a long-term investigation, some of the best advice you can get is from those attorneys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that got to take this thing to court.
Yep.
And if you're going out and doing stuff and they're not on board with it,
You're wasting your
just
time.
creating a problem for them.
The other thing that's really important to have both a full-time, if you can, federal prosecutor and a state prosecutor, right. Because many of these long-term cases, we're dealing with some violent assholes at the beginning of it. Right. Well, we want to use the state system to get those people off the street to make safe the communities, but to protect the federal investigation, which is reaching out.
Right.
And if they're not cooperating, sometimes we step on each other and something's divulged that wasn't ready, or we screw their case up. So I think that's the strength of the strike forces.
And I think sometimes with those, as you talk about everybody getting along and sharing the information and putting everybody together, is because sometimes you get all those different agencies in there and you get a splinter. And those splinters do nothing but hurt. This guy, they want to withhold information because their agency wants to do this, or this agency wants to do that. Or the locals sometimes will stumble into an investigation.
Yes.
And a lot of feelings get hurt when they're like, hey, my guys were working this case. And then a particular strike force comes in and says, hey, we've been working this case for a long time. We get it. But some feelings can get hurt. And I've seen a lot of times where these strike force people will bring those local agencies in just for that case, but to let them have part of the case and let it.
I mean, that's one of the things that always drove me nuts. Whose arrest is it? Who cares? You can do your agency paperwork. You do.
Right.
It's all the same thing. One of the things that I really like about the strike force, and it happened in Chicago, it was kind of something I wasn't thinking about. Guys were dying to get in it.
Yeah.
So you got the cream of the crop of all the agencies. So I got to get to the strike force. And I knew this when we arrested a Mexican trafficker, and one of the guys said, you're under arrest, blah, blah, blah. And the guy said, are you with DEA? He goes, no, we're with the strike force. And the bad guy says, oh, shit.
We had that happen to us, too.
It was great.
When you guys started them back in Chicago, I think today they're I don't want to say they're better, but believe there's 12 now. There's 12 strike-ish, give or take, right? There's one in St. Louis, which I think is amazing. But what you can do now is you can take what works in all of them and push them together. You know, when Jack started it in Chicago,
technology especially.
Yeah, absolutely. They were figuring it out as they went, and I know that there's some issues, and you talk about fluidity. It has to be fluid as well because we also have this immigration deal that we got now, right? So HSI, and they become a huge part of it.
Right.
With oh my gosh, there's a Venezuelan gang member. We need to get him. So
ICE. Yeah, we had an ICE member in our group.
Well, I don't think it's ICE anymore, right?
It's not?
I don't know. I don't remember. It changed so many times.
I don't know.
But I also think that the prosecutors, and I was going to bring it up, but he brought up the state and local prosecutors are essential, because essentially what the strike force is it's a group of the best, but also they maneuver through these cases like a chess game. It's not just go out and thump people on the head. There's some of that, right? But there's also this beautiful ballet of enticing people into this and these conspiracies, and that has to be done with cooperation, state, local, federal, and combing and offices. You're right, but the one thing that it takes strong leaders. Right. And if you don't have strong leaders, that thing goes off into a splinter.
Turns into a hideout.
Well, and I'll give you an example of that. Is 2003 when I went to DEA, you started a violent crime task force, a whole thing, just devoted to violent crime, which was your agents were coming to the locals because they knew where all the violent crime was. And I was lucky enough to be part of that group, and Joe Speece and Tony
Oh,
Lockenick.
those guys are unbelievable.
And that's where your leaders come in. And then Joe Mokel was on board with it, and you and Chief Mokel would lead from a distance. But that was your initiative, and don't quote me on this, but I believe the 2003 or 2004 murder was like 60.
Yep.
And it's never been seen before.
Wow.
Now, is it because of that? I don't know if that could have been an analogy. It did go up the next year, but 60 is a ridiculously low number.
Yeah.
And that's because everybody was out there. I mean, everybody. Mobile Reserve, those strike forces, everybody was working in tandem.
And they understood what the process was.
Right.
Right.
It's the same thing now, right? It's just a bigger mission. There's a macro mission and a micro mission.
Right.
There's little bits of people, but it's the same. We're inundated. And
I think one of the things that excites me the most about the possibility of getting this job, which, by the way, I probably won't because I'm Irish and I got bad luck. But we never wanted to turn an illegal alien loose.
Right.
They'd get caught up in our investigation. We'd lock them up. We'd call ICE, and ICE would say, our hands are tied. There's no adjudication.
Nope.
They don't want to deal with this. That's all over with.
yeah.
We lock them up. Because I guarantee you, we go into a house to get somebody, there's going to be other people in the house, and chances are good if this is the right organization, they're all illegal. They got to go.
Yeah. Yeah, they're criminals. They're sitting here
They broke the
perpetrating
law.
crime.
They got to go.
Well, then they got to streamline that system to get them to go too,
Yeah.
because that's why a lot of people were pushing that away, is because the process, the entire process. I don't know. I forget the ICE guy, the ICE agent's name that was with us, but he explained it to us that it was just an absolute headache, and it was just no matter what, the guy was getting back out anyway.
It changed all the time. That was the other problem.
This is going to be different. I mean, look at the team
Right.
we're building at a higher level, and Bondi, Patel,
Right.
Everybody
on the same page.
Holman. They just named the ICE director the other day. I think it's just a different. It's an exciting time to be.
Oh, I think the
DEA.
buzz around law enforcement in general, at all levels, is up, and I think it would be extremely neat process. These strike forces are extremely neat to work in. They're effective. I think that just brings more excitement to law enforcement.
I do too.
So the strike force, I can tell you the strike force in St. Louis, and it's Syntec-esque, right? Syntec-esque in a different scale. We're not international. But Jack's right. Everybody walks around there happy. They all want to work.
Right.
They chit-chat, they talk. When one group goes out, I hear, be safe, take care, let us know how it goes, call
Right.
us if you need something.
Well, that's how
So-
our group used to work. We used to
But
sit
we
around
were
in the
wo-
morning and just
Yeah,
talk about everybody's
15,
cases.
18 of us.
Right.
200 is an army. And to work the same mission and to bring all that intelligence up through, pass it out, prosecutors, leaders, it's a great thing to watch.
It works, and I think you hit this. Look, we've got great managers everywhere. You got great managers in the police department. We got great managers at DEA. We don't have many leaders.
No.
Right. Big difference.
And when we put these entities together, it's really important that, number one, they have a vision, they're supported with resources, and they got somebody that's going to guide them. Otherwise, they become their own entity within the same building. And that, I think, is the biggest waste. Now, we do have some strike forces that are like that.
Yeah.
But they got to be cleaned
Yeah.
or refocused. And I think as I look at DEA broadly, our strength is our state and locals. That's our strength. That's what we build on. We don't build on the overseas guy that's having tea at the embassy and does email once a month, when he sobers up. We don't do that. And that goes back to the fluidity of the agency. Do we really need do we need 2 DEA offices in Switzerland?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do we?
No.
Right. Do we need 13 senior agents in Green Bay, Wisconsin, because they all like to fish and hunt?
No.
And then we have a crucial office on the border that has all junior agents?
Right.
Is that right?
No, it's not.
That's a change that we gotta. It's gonna It's not going to be fun. Those pants aren't going to fit everybody.
No.
But
you
it's
called
got to
it.
get done.
It's fluid to the threat.
Right.
We have to change. We have to get through the mind-numbing bureaucracy to fight the threat. And what's the threat right now? It's not in Switzerland.
Do you know the most important thing a congressman ever told me? And I set myself up for this because I thought I was leading him down a road, which I didn't go because he didn't bite, was I was stressing the importance of the border and how we didn't have enough people on the border. We had the facilities, we didn't have the bodies. He said, stop right there. I've met with you 15 times. You never asked me for money to do that. And it hit me like, that's why you've got to have a direction, you got to have policy, and you got to make sure these people who are directly responsible for your funding understand what, they don't have to agree with you, but they understand it. You know, it's just like telling a rural DEA agent, hey, look, you better know who the local police chief is. He doesn't have to like you, but you better know who he is.
Absolutely.
And you find that we're kind of away from that now. When you have an administrator that never even visits a major office, why would you feel like I gotta go meet the new sheriff?
Right.
So those are complicated issues, but they can eat away at an agency and make it less effective.
One of the things that everybody's going to ask, that if you go through the process and you're going to have to reallocate some resources. One of them being money and cost cutting. What kind of cost cutting things can you see that would, and when I say cost cutting, not that we wouldn't spend the money that was already allocated, but you could reallocate some money to better fronts.
First and foremost, my guidance would be is protect the homeland. Second of all, our offices overseas, some 60 or 70 offices in 60 countries, are they important? Because they're awfully expensive. Are they important?
Some of them are. You're not.
Some of them
you're
are
not,
crucial,
exactly.
but some of them aren't. Are our offices domestically, I think we're up to 140 offices, are they in the right place? Do we need to move them? Do we need to allocate those? And then the other crucial issue, I think, would be on the hiring side. Are we hiring the right people? Are we throwing good money after bad to do backgrounds on people that we shouldn't be looking at to begin with? How do we make that more efficient? And that leads me to the next thing. What is it that we're doing that we could contract out that would provide more efficiency and save us a lot of money? Our whole personnel apparatus is archaic. We can't get people through the door. We'll develop a list. Guys want to be DEA agents, and they're on this list for 3 years. And because we can't get it done, we can't get the background done, the paperwork's lost, they go to another agency. And I'm certain, because I know it happened, that some other federal agencies were poaching off our lists. So
it happens.
And those are, I think that's important. So how can we contract out services that can be specific, that can be more efficient? Personnel would be one. I think our whole public relation thing needs to be professionalized, because I never see DEA on TV. I never see them in the newspapers. That's important, because that means the congressman and the citizens understand what it is you're trying to do and what you've accomplished. So I would look at that too.
I think you mentioned in another episode was like spreading out the DC imprint.
Yeah.
Like right now, I don't know how many you got in DC, but kind of spreading that out. How would that look?
Well, I think it's important if you understand. I think in the headquarters building when I left, there was maybe 2,200 agents, right?
Wow.
Maybe,
20 agents in DC?
yeah, in the headquarters building. 1,400 agents.
Yeah,
1,400 agents that were assigned. Not all the positions were filled. We only got 6,000 agents worldwide. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Those administrative functions could be handled regionally. They would be much more efficient, and work could get done faster, and I think the employees would be a lot happier. So those are the things. Now, there could be federal law involved that prohibits us from doing that. I don't know, but we got to work on it.
Yeah.
And I think we got an incoming president that's going to listen.
I do too.
To try to get this, hey, why can't we do that? Well, again, this is the way it's always been done. Well, We're not doing it there anymore.
Yeah. I think efficiency is the key,
Yeah.
and that's something you can do right away.
And
There's-
I also think, Joe, we got to take a step up in technology.
oh, without a doubt.
I mean, if you look at the technology that's going to be available if Elon Musk still stays in the game a little bit, we've got to do better on that. Drones, electronic surveillance equipment, surveillance on the border has to be more efficient. Detections at our points of entry. We've got to invest in the infrastructure in that to have a long-term effect. We can't just do it every 4 years and say, well, let's go a different direction. The relationships with our foreign counterparts has to be priority.
Yeah.
One of the things that I always found that was somewhat inefficient, in my opinion, was that when you guys would promote people and you'd move them to Washington when they were making such a great impact in the area they're in, would you think about not doing that anymore and leaving people where they're effective?
That would, yes, absolutely. That would be one of the ways we could downgrade the size of people in headquarters. Because if you have an agent who's not interested in getting promoted past the supervisory level, that's doing a great job, that's family is happy, what are we making him go there for?
Right.
And traumatize his family, his kids, and then in 3 years saying, here's a list of what's opening. Well, I don't want to go to any of those.
Because we're still unhappy from the first move.
Right. So, yeah, definitely, wholeheartedly, that'd be on day one too. How do we make that happen?
What I liked about what we talked about at lunch the other day when we were kind of putting this thing together, I loved, Jack said, he goes, you know what the greatest little thing about efficiency is? You sit down and you go, why do we do that? Well, we do that because we used to. We'll get rid of that.
Right.
You know, you put a big X right there.
Right.
If the
It's the
words
way
come
it's
out of
always
your
been
mouth,
done.
if that's the way it's always been done,
Yeah, that's not a good
that's
thing.
something that needs to go.
Right.
And-
Well, one of
and-
the things is, if one of you guys want to talk about the promotion process and how that occurs and how you get promoted.
I think we have two great perspectives. His first, mine second. His at the top, and then mine in the middle.
We're at a point in this agency now where being promoted is not a priority. I don't know if that's a shift in the younger people, but there are many jobs throughout the agency that they have actings in them because people don't want to put in for them. They don't want to move. We've got to find a way it could be financial bonus or something like that. We've got to find a way to do that. But I will tell you, one of the things that I would do right away, when an agent's hired, part of his condition of employment is he signs a career-long agreement, mobility agreement, and says you will be moved for the good of the service domestically. We will never move you overseas. You have to put in for that. I'm going to institute in situations where we need good people, and if they have competed to get a score or said they're interested in getting promoted, we need you, buddy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I moved 13 stinking times. It's
a lot.
You're not big into the moving thing.
I'm not
as big.
I'm not big on the moving thing. But if you want certain jobs, you have to move.
Right.
Right. So we all took choices in our careers, and we all did a couple things. I didn't move 13 times. I moved. If you count the one from Chicago, I think it was like 6.
most of my moves were
But Jack's, and not to blow smoke up his ass, but his son went to 4 different high schools in 4 different states. How bad do you think that hatred lasted
Right.
after he graduated from
That's a
college?
lot that lasting.
Yeah, I
that's
bought him a
lasting.
car.
Yeah, but I think this is just my opinion, right? It's nothing. I thought the promotion process was kind of a mess. I didn't like that. I didn't like that we had a career board where there were permanent members from other states and there were members that rotated in and out. I like the approach of the regional. The regional office has the autonomy, and then Jack's team just vets the candidates. If you want that guy, and you're going to be held to that
When
standard.
you're voting on a guy you've
But
never met before.
when you're like a young guy like myself, when I was going through it, there was guys from New York and New Jersey. They don't know who I am. Evaluating me, and then
Right.
saying,
And
well,
where you live and the
Yeah.
environment you had to work in.
it became like this
Yeah.
power grab of insanity.
Some of that, the career board concept is derived from lawsuits.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the FBI, for instance, has a regional career board. That doesn't mean that we can't do that. And again, okay, when did that happen? 1967?
Yeah.
Could we do something here? Or?
That was the part I didn't like. I just thought I thought you lost a lot of control, and certain people got a lot more power than they deserved or than they should have,
Yeah.
because it was the way it always was. Now, I don't know anything. I know he was sued at least 15 times when he was the deputy administrator on personnel issues. And those aren't going to go away. I mean, they're going to
Yeah,
come
Right.
all
Like
the time.
I think you said it earlier, you got to vet a lot of that through legal systems.
You just do.
Legal-
You just
legal
do.
department.
Yeah.
I really like, and he talked about it, we talked about it, these regional, autonomous regional offices, where if you're the special agent in charge, you want those 20 guys, 20 girls, whatever, you get them. And then you get evaluated.
You
If
can't.
You're not working.
You can't. You can't put a winning baseball team together if you're the manager and you can't bring your team together.
Right.
Your people.
So at
So
your,
it's- it
at your
doesn't-
level, it was the same way, and I thought that was ludicrous. You're the deputy administrator, but you can't pick your top 5. I mean, you got a say in it. Or if you're an SES, like the SES here in St. Louis, he may not get to pick his number 1 and 2. He may get one from one of those guys from New Jersey that says, I want this guy to get promoted. Well, now you got a part of your team is not your team.
Right.
How do you succeed?
And I think that's one of your, when you allocate the resources in DC and you go to that four regions is what you would want to go to.
Right.
And you make them kind of like their own little DEAs.
Absolutely.
And, you know, there is going to be some movement on top with those. But within each of those regions, you're going to have 10, 15 states.
This goes back to, and this is a great segue into another bone I have. How do we measure our success? Our metrics.
Yeah.
Our metrics are archaic. How much dope did you seize? How many people did you arrest? How many guns you get? How much money you seize? Those are important indicators. But what's really important is what impact did that investigation have on the community, have on the criminal organization? And nobody's going to know that better than a regional boss who knows what issues occur in his region, which are different. They're different in Green Bay, Wisconsin than they are in El Paso.
Correct.
But they're still impactful to his area of operations. So that's another thing we really have to look at.
Yeah, measuring that has to be transformed.
Yeah, we did that to ourselves.
Yeah.
We told Congress year after year, hey, look at all of this. Look at all this we did. Okay, great, that's great. But what's the impact to that?
But if you can seize less, let's just say you didn't seize a bunch of stuff on a case, but there was a regional impact that you can say that crime was down.
Fentanyl murders went down 25, or fentanyl deaths went down 25%.
I'd much rather say that than I seize 40 kilos of.
Or the flip side is, you're the local police chief, and you're working with DEA, and you developed a case that not only affects and impacted your jurisdiction, but because of what you did, you sent the leads to another office, and it impacted their two separate areas with two different priorities, but you made a footprint across the country. We're not doing that now.
No.
And I think that regional approach can help that, because now the pressure's not on to seize all that. Because sometimes when you're getting judged by that, that's how you run your cases, right? If you're getting judged by the money we seize or the dope we're getting, it can impact the decisions you get on the wires and everything else.
You could look at a group that hits interdiction.
Yeah.
They hit money, they hit dope, and then I look at the end of the year stats. They arrested 2 guys. What are we doing?
I have a funny. You want to hear a funny interdiction story?
Sure.
Let's go,
I'm
baby.
going to give you a funny one.
Let's go. I want to hear it.
So,
Yeah, this is too serious. We
we
got
got
to.
This is a funny one. This just goes to show you the absurdity sometimes in government agencies. So I'm in a local little area in Illinois. I got sent there. We were doing a really, really cool little caper. And I get sent there right after Syntac the first time. And one of the guys in my group comes up with, a brilliant New Yorker, comes up with this great idea to link all the outlying offices with interdiction. And it was to collect intelligence on mainly Sinaloa cartel, because you had just left to be chief of ops, so there was other leaders in there, but or maybe you were still. It doesn't matter. So we come up with this, or he comes up with this interdiction strategy, sells it to OCDF, which is one of those organized crime drug enforcement task force, to get money for funding and training and all kinds of other stuff, and then we go out. And we start putting the dots together and do these week-long interdictions where
In different areas.
in all these outlying offices, and then connecting all the intelligence to uncover what is happening in Chicago. How are they getting the dope there? How are they getting the money out? who's coming in, what do the cells look like, are there terrorist cells, all this stuff. Extremely successful. Not only in seized money, which is always big, right? Because that's a metric that we came up with, but shared intelligence. The intelligence got written up and shared with other offices, and Jack was talking about leads. So we would send these leads out to Philly or New York or to wherever, and it all felt like we were working together and getting things great, and we had a mission and a plan. It was to figure a bunch of stuff out. A new boss comes in, and the very first thing he says is, "This is a very successful program, but we are not the interdiction police. The state highway patrol is," and cancels it.
And there you go.
And it was gone. And then that was it. It was gone.
And that's how, yeah.
So-
like you said, that's probably a manager that was not a leader.
Right.
But
We saw liability in it. I don't, these things, something could go wrong here. And that's the other
That's law
stinking,
enforcement in general.
that's the other stinking thing I would say on day one, Joe, and you've heard this before, is we're paying these guys to be risk takers,
Absolutely.
to work with a sense of urgency, because there's a lot of people, the American public is dependent on them. And that's the job. You didn't take this job to get rich, God
No.
knows.
And you and I, we just did something for, we just did a documentary with 50 Cent's production crew, something that
Thanks to you.
developed from this show when we were, our very first episode, we were going, "Hey, 50 Cent, well, we're saying this to Donald Trump right now. Hey, Donald Trump, if
Well,
you're
and I
listening."
will say that this was my idea. I went to Jack and Joe and I said, "Hey, a lot of these politicians, to try to get their jobs, they're going on podcasts.
Yeah.
You guys want to pitch what might happen?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's fine."
I
why
actually
not?
like
Love it.
it, but
I
when
love
we
it.
one of
Thank
the
you.
things we talked about on this documentary, we went to Detroit and they filmed it. We discussed about these agents, like they are risk takers and they do carry weapons, and they put their life on the line every day when they're out on the street. But they got to get off their asses and get away from their desks and get out and work with the state
Right.
and locals and work on the
Yeah.
project. There's nothing more important than watching.
Right.
Right? Setting up the chess move and watching it. Can't do that from your desk.
No, not to blow.
Can't do that.
Not to blow smoke up your ass, but when you were our
Please do.
supervisor, when you were our supervisor in our task force, is we were very productive because all of us were doing different things at the same time, but we all knew what each other were doing.
Yeah.
And we would come together when necessary to pop a door, to sit a wire, but everybody knew what everybody was doing. And our communications, I thought, were very well.
Well, I always knew we were going to have a good day, and that's from his leadership, because he was my boss when I was a younger agent, was if I looked out and I was, because a boss has a lot of administrative stuff. It's just the way it is.
Right.
And then you usually have like a number two that kind of runs the street until you get out there or whatever. And if I looked out and you guys were all gone, I knew it was good. Gone meaning out on the street,
Right.
surveillance.
Never had to worry that much about me.
If I looked out and I saw Tommy, something's wrong.
Or if we were sweating,
Right,
we were trying to figure
I
something
try
out.
to stay out of the buildings as much as possible.
It's just what I love about the future, or where I see the next 4 years, no matter who gets in the spot that Jack's looking at, and of course I hope it's him, is there's a mandate.
It's out there.
There is a mandate on where we're going, and I love that because it gives.
Never had it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I got a good. We were talking earlier about how we could kick in 60 doors at a time. Well, I think one of your guys. I think it was Murphy and Llewellyn.
Sometimes the wrong door, by the way.
Sometimes the wrong door
We'll get to
3
one of
times.
those later, but. I was in the Central Patrol Detective Bureau at the time, and it was the roundup day, and after a big case for the listeners, after, a long wire case, sometimes that'll wrap up with anywhere from 10 to 15 to, in this particular one, I think they had a record number. It was somewhere like 50 or 60. So they had detectives from all over the place kicking in this door. Well, I was in the bureau at the time, and the team we had, we knew we weren't hitting a house that, was real relevant to the case, because that was going to be the case agents, and those guys were going to hit the houses that were important. So they sent us somewhere up. It was right along O'Fallon Park, two or three stories, and we hit the door, and the people were like, "What are you doing?" And they just sat down, and we're looking for stuff, and we didn't find any dope. But we went up. I went into the second floor bathroom, and just checking in, and there sat a 3-foot alligator in the in the bathtub, just sitting there looking at me. Oh, we're out of here. They can have all the dope they want. I'm not dealing with this alligator. I just shut the door, and I think I called Llewellyn. I go, hey, you got this alligator up here. What do you want us to do? Because I'm not calling animal control, but if you guys want it, you guys come up and get it. He's like, no, get out of there. Go on.
We did a warrant on a South Side Chicago dope dealer, and I was a young guy, so I was around the back, and the other guys were hitting the front, and I kept hearing this, like a chain dragging.
Oh my God!
So I'm looking around, thinking, oh, there's a dog or something. He had a monkey with a collar on it, tied to a chain that was up on the roof, and he jumped down. When I was there, my old partner Maloney was there. I looked at him, he looked at me. I crapped my pants, and we both said, "What are we doing?"
Oh my God!
Yeah.
And then we had the other one. You were there on the wrong door one.
Oh yeah.
And this was coming off one of the agents or somebody in another group had hit the wrong door. And anytime that happens, you get made fun of a lot because you cause a lot of problems also. And you decided you were going to go out with us. It was that apartment. Remember that square apartment building? It was a square apartment building, and Lanham was down on the bottom.
Yeah.
And you guys were in the back, kind of walking up gingerly, just kind of taking your time. And we're up there. We're going to hit the door. And Lanham's down. He's looking at us, and we're pound the door one time, and all of a sudden you hear, "Wrong door!" We're like, "What?" "Stop! Wrong door!" So we were one door off, and it didn't pop open, though, thank God. And then we went and got the right door, and this was right after that. And Riley just looked at all of us and goes, "You guys are something else."
I think I'll go back to the office.
Why do I come out? I'll never get, "Wrong door!"
Oh my goodness!
That's not what you want to hear after the first swing. But luckily, some weakling was tearing it up. What else we got to talk about, Joseph?
I think what I would like to hear is they always give somebody, and you're on the spot, right? You can speak in front of anybody, but you're on the spot. If I'm Donald, if we're Trump, you got 2 minutes. How do you sell it?
3 priorities: to meld what we're doing with immigration, to make sure that we're working side by side when we run across those people and use the system to do that. Number 2, to be fluid and move where the threat is.
Love it.
And I think the third and final thing is reinvigorate our workforce and make our agency more efficient and effective.
Love it.
And cut costs where we can, where we're wasting it. And to make sure that everybody understands what it is we're supposed to do, and to work with our state and locals and our county and city police chiefs and the prosecutors like we've never done before. In fact, that's going to be mandated. So it's an all-around thing. I think the other thing is important too, is having past perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to make those mistakes again.
No, that's the greatest learning tool, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like it.
Well, the one thing that I want to wish you the best of luck, and I know that and me and Joe, like we said, we're biased, but I think you would be the best choice of the people, and I do know a little bit about the other people that are coming in through, just being in DEA, but I do think you'd be the best choice. However, there's a part of me that doesn't want you to get it, and it's the podcast part of me, because now that and if Jack does not get named, Jack, Joe, and I will be doing a weekly show.
I look forward to that.
And we've got other things going on. Joe does with the BMF, correct? The Black Mafia family.
We both, Jack does as well. Can we talk a little bit about some of those projects?
Absolutely.
So, Jack wrote a book, and based on the book, it's a good book. It's a great airport read. If you ever want to step in the life of a Southside Chicago Irish guy with great parents, somewhat of an athlete. I'm obviously not talking about me. And
you can run.
It's a great read because you step into somebody else's shoes, and for that hour or 2 hours that you're reading it, you get to see what it's like.
What's the name of the book, Jack?
Drug Warrior.
Drug Warrior.
Drug Warrior. I say pay attention. I believe it's chapter 7 or 8. That's called St. Louis Blues. It's about this other character in there, and it's really good. But based on that, Jack was introduced to some people out in Hollywood based on the book, and a friend of mine was a producer back in the day. He still is a producer, a guy from the south side of Chicago, and I did a little bit of work with him on some character stuff for some of the shows he was working on. And then Jack and I kind of collaborated on about 4 shows off of the book, like the same. Different deals, but written like the book was written.
Right.
And some of them are getting some play today, and it's neat. I would say you might see something that we put together on TV maybe in the next year or so. And then we've been asked to create a script on something that I think is
a little local, with a little local flavor.
Well, we got one really good local one, and I thought the monkey he was talking about was this monkey, but we'll have to let
we
you
got another monkey in the
We
play?
got another monkey.
Unfortunately,
Another monkey
there's some
in play?
monkeys involved. Yeah.
And I think for me, it's been a blast because I always like the creative side, and to be able to tell a story and then let somebody walk in our shoes just for that little bit and lose themselves. I know when I watch a show like we were talking about Landman, I just love it.
Right. My wife watches.
Oh, it's fantastic, and you become part of the characters, and that's what we're trying to do. And we got lucky. There's some good people helping us in Hollywood.
No, and we've gone just here locally. Those strike forces and those HIDAs and those OSADEF cases, we could talk about all day long. We can get some attorneys up here. Get some agents.
I think this one that they've asked us to do the script on you'll like, and we'll talk about it more when we get some stuff.
There's a St. Louis connection to that.
There is, and then it'll be like the Strike Force-esque.
Right.
So where you really get into these different agencies and how they work, and it'll be drama. It'll be.
So, but again, I want you to get that job. We can always do this later. And we can always use you guys from Washington. A little call-ins.
He's promised me.
No.
Little call-ins.
Every week. We'll do it every week.
All right.
No,
all right.
He's promised me that there would be some sort of a weekly call-in or something.
Let's do it.
And it would be fun.
But this is it's just so exciting that you're even involved in the conversation. And I think that's a testament to your career and how great it was.
It's funny because, we're wrapping this up, and I think I don't know, we've 4 or 5 podcasts with you guys. I always come in here and laugh my ass off. And I felt today like this is serious,
Right. Too serious?
It's too serious. It's like I'm caught off guard being serious. But I do feel so strongly about the job. I had a really good friend of mine said, all you need to do is get the interview and they'll give you the job.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I think what he's saying is, you have an idea of what you want to do. And I don't know if anybody else does, but that's probably why I won't get it. But anyways, I want to sincerely thank you and your guys and everybody that's doing it for your efforts.
Joe pointed out how sometimes the creative part is a fun part, and that's I've had a lot of fun just in the last year with all of this.
Yeah.
And look forward to building it, and with you guys, and hopefully with you guys in Washington. If not, we can build it locally here and maybe hit the streets too.
I will tell you that since we left Washington, the rent has doubled. So,
You've been checking into that, have you?
Yeah, the rent has doubled.
You did it just in case look at
goodness.
that?
So as we look at the team, Joe is slotted to be the chief of staff.
Yeah.
Which scares me.
Yeah, me too.
Because that means he's going to have his fingers in virtually everything, which is what you need.
And he's still got to take my calls.
And he will. He was not going to sleep much, but he will. I can't think of anybody better for that job than you.
Thank you very much.
That's awesome. And best of luck to both of you guys.
Thank you.
Either way, we'll be back in another show. And even if you get named, we'll come back from one last Federal Friday. And then from that, we'll work it out.
It's a deal.
All right. Peace out.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care.